Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
You're listening to Tony Graham on Binjang 91.5, and today I'm going to be talking to Matthew Dickerson, the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. As a matter of fact, I've got him online in Studio 2 right now to talk about the outcomes of the Standing Committee meetings that were held on Thursday night. That was last night, in this case. Hello, Matthew.
G'day, Tony. How are you going?
I'm pretty good. So let's start off with the tender for the design and construction of the Saxa Road Coomabella Causeway Bridge, it's happening, isn't it?
It is good news, Tony, and this is certainly something that has been talked about for some time. And of course, we're chasing funds from the government to try and cover the cost of this particular bridge, but we also believe as councillors that it's too important a project just to sit around on our hands and wait till we get an answer back. We've got grant applications in at the moment, but we need to get moving and make sure that this occurs and this happens. So last night the decision was made to award the tender, and the winning tenderer was a company called Bridge and Marine Engineering Proprietary Limited, and they've been awarded the tender for the amount of $1.702 million for that particular tender. So that's the first step. Obviously, there are further steps to go. There'll be the contracts to sign. There'll be the design component of that. We still don't expect that bridge to be completed until probably this time next year, maybe a little bit after, maybe April 2025 would be the expected time frame. It's not a small project, it is a significant project, but this will be so much better than the old causeway that's there because, as we all know, the old causeway, it didn't take a lot of rain and suddenly that causeway was underwater and it made it very difficult for people to get across there, and then a bit more rain and certainly it was completely underwater or it was damaged as we've seen with it lately. So this bridge will be up at a level that there'll be a bit of rain and you'll just be able to look at the water going underneath the bridge, Tony.
Yes, well, that'll be very pleasant, I guess. A lot better than wondering whether it's safe to go across the current situation, the causeway. Matthew, so leading on from that, the questions I often get asked from the community is, how are things progressing with the low-level bridge here in Wellington across the Macquarie?
So at the moment, we're still waiting. We've got an application in with the state government in relation to our disaster recovery application and funding on that. You'll remember that the quantum of the repair work that needs to be done there was approximately $22 million. I'm going from memory there, but it was definitely over $20 million. So let's say $22 million approximately for that. And we just simply don't have that in our budget. But we also think the disaster recovery process should allow us to be able to access those funds because obviously that was as a result of flooding, a disaster as such. So we're still waiting for the outcome of that. And we do ask about that regularly, but we do find that, and this has been my experience on council forever, Tony, you put applications in, you put grant applications in. Some of them have got certain programs, some of them don't, but we always find it takes some time for government to make decision because we're one council. There's 128 councils, and I imagine that lots of those councils are putting applications in on a regular basis. So it does take some time to get an answer back from the government, but we haven't forgotten about it. We know it's there. We do mention it on a regular basis whenever I see the relevant minister. And again, we hope that we'll get that funding, and that would be fantastic to be able to take that back to its former glory.
Yes, okay. And just to throw you a curly one, out at Gollan there with the Spices Creek situation, another causeway which is permanently under about a foot of water with sand in it and causing all sorts of problems. I know the council is looking forward to put a bridge there too. So is there anything sort of in the works there?
That's one we're going to potentially, and I can't say definitely yet, but potentially use some money as part of the renewable energy zone. We're talking to some proponents around that one and hopefully use some of the funds that will come through from that. Now, there's still a few steps to go for that one. That's not going to happen overnight. The work that we would need to do on that, if it was just left to council's budget, would probably be 15 years or so away. So it's not in the near vicinity in our budgeting process. But this, I think, Tony, is one of the advantages that we will see out of having extra funds flow into the region and into council from the various proponents and from Energy Co as the renewable energy zone starts to develop. So again, we're trying to bring that forward by many years, and we're trying to do that via some of these funds. But again, it's a process still that we've got a few steps to go through.
Okay. And I believe you've had a report from the Public Spaces Tree Committee. So how did that go?
So the standing committees last night really just put the rubber stamp on the reports from various committees. The Public Spaces Tree Committee is one of those committees, obviously, and so that was really so there was no discussion about that last night. That was really just putting the rubber stamp on the fact that that report has gone through. The latest report to the Public Spaces Tree Committee has occurred, and there was nothing there that needed to be changed, I suppose, from council laws last night. So that was really just saying, yes, we acknowledge that meeting has occurred and everything was okay.
Okay, so is there any decisions to be made about that at the upcoming council meeting, the full ordinary meeting?
Not really. I mean, everything we do is a decision, and the decision at council is really to endorse that latest meeting, but no, nothing specific in relation to any dramatic changes on that. So I don't see anything that might affect people in Wellington out of that. People are welcome to go and look at these papers and see if there's something that's in particular of interest to them, but I don't see anything in particular that's going to jump out at people from Wellington from that particular committee meeting.
Okay. And of course, being from Wellington, the Greater Wellington area, the report of the Wellington Town Committee is another thing, of course, that our listeners would be wanting to know about. So, unfortunately, I don't think you're able to tell me much about that one.
Look, I suppose the main thing around that one that I think is interesting, probably two things. The rhino renewal project with the rhino, if you remember the rhino in the CBD of Wellington, that was damaged, so that was taken away. And it was really, what do you want to see happen with the rhino? Do you want to see it replaced? Do you want to see something different there? And the information back from the committee, the discussion that happened at that particular committee meeting, and I didn't attend the Wellington Town Committee meeting, but the information that came back from that was typically that the community doesn't necessarily want to see another rhino there. Are there some other things that could occur in that same space? Is there something else we could put there? And so this is the beauty, I suppose, of having these various committees that are focused on something specific. And so that one there, we'll look at what else we could do to update the rhino without not replacing the rhino as such, but putting something else there. So there'll be some other information that will come forward around that one. So it seems like the community doesn't want the rhino there, and that's fine. We'll listen to the community. The other part was there was an update at that particular committee meeting given on the Central West Orana Renewable Energy Zone. I've just mentioned that in relation to Spices Creek. And the committee was very keen to see almost a standing item in relation to the res that's obviously encompassing parts of Wellington there. And we think it's very important for Wellington to be a part of that and know what's going on. So that will be a standing item for the committee, just to get an update, how things are progressing, where are various projects up to. You've heard me talk about it before, Tony. There are 37 different projects that we know of right now that are at various stages of proposal or planning. There's a lot of activity around that, and that's only today. There might be new projects that come online as that whole res starts to develop even further. So I think that's a good idea to have the Wellington Town Committee just get an update on a regular basis in relation to what's happening with the res.
Yeah. Interesting, going back to the rhino, I've had a few people suggest it could be a good idea to put a wombat there because of the giant wombat fossil that we have, that the Wellington Caves area relates to, and of course we've got that large rendition of a wombat out there at the cave. So perhaps a wombat might be the go.
Well, funnily enough, you say that, Tony, that one of the recommendations from the committee, from the Wellington Town Committee, was that the committee encourages members of the community to have their say on the Rhino Renewal Project and use the Your Say engagement website, or you can get paper survey forms from the Wellington Admin Building. So if people want to see a wombat there, make sure you fill in the survey and tell us that's what you'd like to see there. Will a wombat go there? I obviously can't say yes or no at this stage, Tony. We'll wait and see what comes back from the community and then make a decision on what we put there in its place.
And of course, if you had a wombat there, it could be part of the Rhino Trail as well, encouraging people to stop there. So you won't lose that aspect of it, which would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Well, it could be part of not so much a rhino trail, but you could make it part of an animal trail or a zoo trail. So you could certainly tweak that to take account of the fact that there's not a rhino there in particular. But again, this is what it's all about, Tony. It's all about the community. Our job as councillors is really to listen to the community and where we can, within reason, act on the interests of the community.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, Matthew, well, thanks very much for your discussion today.
No problems at all. The only other one, Tony, that I thought might be worth mentioning just briefly there is I know sometimes you have, I vaguely heard you briefly mention once, maybe twice before, something about toilets in Cameron Park.
Oh, yes.
I thought it would be worthwhile saying it wasn't from the committee meetings last night, but from our council meeting in February. Councillor Richard Ivey, the Deputy Mayor, and obviously one of the two Wellington councillors, had moved a notice of motion in the last council meeting for us to look at the toilet situation, investigate the possibility of more toilets in the park or some way of getting access to more toilets. As you've told me many times before, the 2 single cubicle toilets aren't sufficient for the people that you would like to see come through Cameron Park, and so we need to do something there. That was a great disappointment, obviously, when the last council, for whatever reason, not sure why, Tony, but they replaced multiple toilets with just those 2, which obviously has been a negative for tourism in Wellington. So Richard Ivey brought forward the idea of investigating more toilets around there and just to see what other possibilities it might be. He didn't say definitively go and knock down what's there and build new ones. It was really, let's investigate, especially as we come up to our budget process at the end of June, where we'll make our final decision on the budget. If we're going to need to do something to spend money, that's where Richard was really pushing for something to happen in the Wellington community to give us better facilities there.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion about that and making sure there is something suitable that will restore the situation where we had busloads of tourists stopping there.
Well, let's do better than restore the situation, Tony. Let's make it better than it was before rather than go backwards like you've done in this particular example.
Exactly, yes. Right. Okay, Matthew, well, thanks very much for the discussion.
No problems at all. Always happy to chat, Tony.
Okay, and we've been talking to Matthew Dickinson, the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, on the Standing Committee reports on Binjang 91.5. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Tony.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.